welcome to another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at Terremoto Coffee Room here in New York City as part of the Weekend Jam Jazz Sessions hosted by Mr. Benny Benack III. Tonight here at Terremoto, we have a very special guest, and it's Mack Avenue Records recording artist Veronica Swift. Now, if you know Miss Swift, over the last 6 years has made a very, very important niche and dent in the jazz industry. One, because she's paying homage as well as respecting the Great American Songbook, but she also sings many different types of songs and brings a different vernacular to the great jazz vocalist. Tonight she's going to be performing with Mr. Benny Benack. Also, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about and reflect about her brand new record, which is entitled This Bitter Earth. Now, that song was recorded by the great Dinah Washington, and she felt that it was very important to sing a song that's reflecting on what's going on in the world right now. Also, we're going to sit down and reflect and talk about the great Annie Ross. As you know, this year, the NEA Jazz Master, diva as well as pioneer, left us this year, and we're going to talk about how important her legacy is to the world of vocalese, as well as the importance of the songbook. And also we're going to sit down and reflect and talk about how she's been able to lead her own band and what she expects from her musicians, as well as what the band expects from her as a leader. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of Miss Veronica Swift live here at the Terremoto Coffee Room for the Weekend Jam Jazz Sessions hosted by Mr. Benny Benack III, live here at the Pace Report here in New York City.
Tomorrow's another day, and fortune may come your way with a fire belief to chase away the grief. Tomorrow's another day. The skies above are gray, you know they won't stay.
congratulations on your upcoming record, This Bitter Earth.
Thank you.
This is a departure. This is your fourth record, but this is your second one on Mack Avenue. What did you do differently musically and sonically going into this project?
Well, I wanted to have an album that spoke more to the, like a social commentary record without alienating my audience. And the last record was really just a personal narrative, like a hello, nice to, this is who I am. But now I was talking to Winton and a lot of my heroes today, and they say, music has to say something. And of course, I recorded the album before all the pandemic and the social unrest and everything, and it's just incredible how timely this record is now. And sonically, there are there's a lot of there's a cohesive sound. There's some standards on there, and it's still me, very much, the roots and tradition of where I come from. But I wanted to show my audience, now that they're getting to know me a little more, the other sides, which there's the rock and roll, and there's no rock and roll in this record, but I mean the energy, and more of that aggressive and unrest that's in us, that's within all of us, and I wanted to have that on this record.
And now there's a sidebar to This Bitter Earth. This one of my favorite jazz vocalists, Dinah Washington. But also, when you performed this song, this was replaced by a song that you anticipated on performing at a particular contest.
Oh yes, you want me to speak about the Monk competition? Back in 2015, I was really honored to be a part of that whole experience. And I was so lucky, I made it to the finals, and I was going to do Darn That Dream. And then I remember the shootings in France, Paris, happened that day or the day before, and my mom had showed me This Bitter Earth, and she actually was like, why don't you consider doing this one? And I listened to it, and it really, because my mother, she knows me better than I know myself, and she knew I could do it. She wouldn't have done it if she didn't think I could do it. And so I listened to a bunch of versions, and I found actually when Max Richter, this composer, scoring guy, he took Dinah's vocals and put them in a minor key, the relative minor with strings. And that's where I got the inspiration to work on this arrangement with Stephen Feifke. It was just that somber. It just invoked a different emotion that song needed to invoke at this time in space. And so I just kind of last minute changed to the finals the Monk competition, and it just was right.
The song, I believe, was written by Clyde Otis. Mm-hmm. And, you're right. The song is kind of very relevant. Not kind of. It is very relevant right now.
Yeah, and it also, while people listen to it and the sound, even sonically, it's very, somber and low and mellow. But at the end, and this bitter earth may not be so bitter after all. That's the flower that's growing in the pavement, right? The rose that grows from the sidewalk, or that image comes to mind. And so that's what I wanted to, that's why I put that song first on the record and entitled the record that song, with that title track, because that song actually resembles hope. And I hope that people feel that when they listen to it.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but whose version is better, hers or Aretha's?
Oh.
Because they're both.
It's like saying who's better, Ella or Sarah. It's just like apples and oranges, man. I think just because Dinah's is the first that I heard, it definitely rings out more in my ears, but two of the greatest singers who ever lived. I don't know how to compare those two,
Because I had to bring that up because Aretha did a tremendous job on that album in memory of Dinah. And Dinah, everyone talks, I do too. Everyone talks about Sarah Vaughan, everyone talks about Ella, but they really don't talk about Dinah Washington.
No, the greatest, there's the big three, Ella, Sarah, Billie, and that's who everyone talks about. But what I find with my favorite singers is who are they listening to in the cracks of the singers that people aren't talking about as much. For me, that's Ethel Waters and Mildred Bailey, Dinah Washington, Anita O'Day, and June Christie. Those are kind of the singers that I've really related to, sonically and lyrically, and how they phrase. And
I think another thing too, I think that kind of killed Dinah were the pop songs. when she was doing the blues and then rhythm and blues.
Oh, I'm an evil gal.
Yes. And TV is the thing.
Yeah.
I
Long
mean,
John Blues.
Yes. Yes.
Woo!
Those songs kind of were. Well, that was a controversial song when that came out. I mean,
yeah.
But I think that Dinah had she did the pop and she also did. In fact, they tried to get Sarah to do the pop, but it didn't work for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's also Sarah came to this music also as she loved opera. And Sarah, my mom tells me that Sarah didn't like to be called a jazz singer only. Like she when she was on, was it Johnny Carson? She, everyone's expecting her to do Nearness of You or what have you. She sang Ave Maria. I mean, these are my favorite artists are the ones that, and like Nina Simone too, who their artistry is the name. It's not just some easily labeled thing. It's the opera, and for Nina, the classical piano, and all these. That's what I hope to develop, with my artistry is people know it when they hear the name.
Crazy, crazy, crazy rhythm. Crazy rhythm is the doorway. I'll come my way, you go your way. Crazy rhythm, here's goodbye to you. This is where we have to slow down. I'm too high, you're too low down. Crazy rhythm, from now on we're through. They say that when a highbrow meets a lowbrow, walking along Broadway. Soon the highbrow got no brow, ain't a shame, and you're to blame. What's the use of prohibition? You produce the same condition. Crazy rhythm, I've gone crazy too. Crazy, crazy, crazy rhythm. Crazy, crazy, crazy rhythm. They say that when a highbrow meets a lowbrow walking along Broadway, soon the highbrow, he's got no brow, ain't it a shame, and you're to blame. What's the use of prohibition? You produce the same condition. Crazy rhythm, I'm not crazy too. Benny Benack III. What's the use of prohibition? You produce the same condition. Crazy rhythm, I've gone crazy too. Crazy rhythm, crazy rhythm, crazy rhythm, crazy rhythm, crazy rhythm, I've gone crazy too.
We need to talk about two of your musical heroes. Well, I wouldn't. One is one of your heroes, but another one you really admire, and they're diametrically on opposite ends of the music scope. One is Lady Gaga, who we're gonna go into in just a second, I really like her. And and also Anita O'Day.
Oh yeah.
Anita O'Day, how she phrased and how she made songs her own were a little different than her contemporary.
Yeah, and really when you hear Anita, she's coming from like the phrasing like a la Billie Holiday, but in a bebop, more kind of swing bebop setting, with the big bands, and then later on with her quartet. And then Martha Raye, who was a big band singer and MGM actress. So between the two of them, you really hear Anita where she got her inspiration from. But what I loved about Anita was really just the personality too. Like I could look and break down her phrasing and her technique, and which really like wasn't anywhere near Ella's technique, but she had this. She was so hip and smooth, and when she would phrase these long phrases over these up tempos and just make it sound so easy and relaxed. But what I loved about her the most was she was one of the boys, and that's how I grew up. I was playing trumpet in big bands and as a little kid, and singing with them, and I kind of just connected with her on that. You hear it too in her singing, and of course Lady Gaga.
Well, we're gonna go into Stephanie.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I had the honor of seeing her before she blew up.
Oh, really?
And I knew when I saw her that there was something very unique about her. But I think A Star Is Born really showcased where she wanted to go. She got there quickly, and the naysayers had to sit back and say, damn, this, just even the beginning of the movie, she's doing what, Ave Maria? No, what is she doing?
Le Bien Rouge.
Yes.
Yeah.
The depth and the range that she has
I know.
presented over the last decade.
Yeah, and I know when I say that she's one of my heroes, some people go like, oh really? But I'm telling you, it's not just musically, it's also just, like I said with Anita, the personality that she has. It's just that's who I connect with that. That's kind of where I'm coming from. We're both coming at it from the same angle. And I, of course, love her pop music, too. I am 26 years old in 2020, so I did grow up listening to her as a teenager, and I would go to school dressed up like her, and I would write songs in that style as well as... And then I heard her when she did that record with Tony. I was just like, and there were people complaining and this and that, but I said, you know what? She's a killing singer. She's got pipes,
She worked very hard at what she's doing.
And that is so hard to do, to break away like that and to have it make sense to the core of your being. That, that's where people turn their heads. And I just think she just blossomed from that.
And she's the complete package. She can play the piano, sing. I mean, we have Alicia Keys, we have John Legend. I think anybody that can sing and play the piano at the same time, that's a complete instrument.
Absolutely. And I practice playing, but I'm more of a classical. I'm coming at piano from a classical perspective, but I still keep my chops up. And I actually hope to do, in a future project, merge classical and jazz in a way that makes sense, that isn't like super derivative. And I want to be able to play these Debussy arabesque and then write a song to it. As a lot of jazz standards were written based on a Chopin melody or and I hope to do that someday.
I think where you're going musically, you understand the songbook, because we talked a little bit earlier about how musicians have to listen. And I think what you have done 26 years being around your dad and your mom and being around a lot of great musicians, you've understood the meaning of the song.
Well, that's the core of it. I mean, what we all are, whether we play an instrument or sing or dance or write, I mean, we're all storytellers. And that's my favorite instrumentalist understood the story. I think there's that story of Ben Webster who was recording and playing and he just stopped, pulls the horn away, and people say, what is it? He says, I forgot the lyrics. And that's the difference between the great artists and, from the rest, to me. And also, same thing with singers. The singers who understand harmonic structure, and it doesn't mean you have to scat, but I'm just saying understanding what the instrumentalists understand. This is where the great artists are, reside.
Veronica, did you 10 years ago know that this is what you were going to do?
Absolutely. it wasn't like something I decided I wanted to do. I didn't have the light bulb go off where I heard something and I said, that's what I want to do. But it was, like you mentioned, my mother and father. I grew up in green rooms, basically, and on the road and sleeping in the cars. And it's just the path was kind of just placed before me by some greater power. And I saw that it's a mix of my passion and duty, sense of duty to the people that came before me and laid the path, and opened doors so that I could do it right now. So I owe it to them and my mother and father and my friends,
Benny loves this song.
I do. I love this song. I also love the coffee.
You got it.
A little taste might hit the spot. A little taste might help a lot. It may be nice, it may be not. It's a sedation, good for a sticky situation. One little taste might pave the way. It has been known to save the day. One little taste might be okay. In my condition, this is a risky proposition. Why not spare myself a little pain? It couldn't hurt. Why lock my appetite out in the rain without a shirt? Who said self-denial's great? It wasn't me. 'Cause I found it ought to taste a different. One little taste can make a whole lot of difference.
At one point, I'm gonna have to sit down and break bread with Chris Bodie. We were gonna do it years ago, but paths scheduling is crazy. But I bring up Chris Bodie, and I also bring up Benny Green and Wynton Marsalis because you have had the opportunity to sing 3 different styles of music, and it's kind of like it's like a roller coaster. One minute you're straight ahead doing what we're doing today, and then you can do some pop songs. How do you change your demeanor and your mode when you're playing with those musicians?
Well, on Chris's show, I really am just doing straight ahead. He hired me because he wanted the bebop aspect of his show, which has a lot of pop elements, but I don't sing pop on Chris's show. I sing There'll Never Be Another You, and we scat back and forth, and then I sing Embraceable You, and sometimes Moanin'. It's a bebop hang on Chris's gig because he loves that, and he hasn't had a chance to do it as much. And then, of course, with Wynton, it's a different thing every time. Just like last year at Marciac, we did a bebop tribute show, which was special. I did one song with lyrics. It was awesome. And, of course, Benny Green, he's my brother, musical brother, and I met him when I was 12 years old. It's all the same. It's all coming from the authentic place of my family, my roots, and a mix of the stuff that I've picked up along the way, like 20s music and theater and even some rock and roll. I was mentioning just even if it's just the energy, the edge, and angst that really can push a song and blossom this. Like You Don't Know What Love Is, for example. I was never able to really understand that song until I was in my rock band and I understood, spiteful energy that song for me needed. So just getting the chance to play with my 3 heroes, it's surreal. I have to pinch myself sometimes.
And now you leading your band, what are some of the things that you're implementing with the members of your band? What are some of the things that you expect from them, and what are some of the things they expect from you?
That's a very good question. So my band changes. I have a few different trios that I work with, and I prefer that because then it forces me to sing differently with everybody. But they're all I hire musicians that are just great listeners, that really like their eyes are up here and looking at each other, and it's, I mean, jazz, everyone talks about it needs to be interactive and you're always listening, but you can tell when someone's not, and sometimes, you know, I'm privy to it, you know, not listening and get in my head and think too much. And what I like about the musicians that I have been working with for the past few years is that it's home. It feels like home, and that's equally on stage and off the stage. The technicalities of our musicianship kind of just are, what's what we do in practice. You practice the technical aspects of your instrument so much that it becomes second nature. And that's kind of bled into the other aspects of our artistry together. And we listen together. Listening together is huge. Not enough young musicians do that anymore. After college, people kind of just, you know, then they go out and hang in the clubs. But continuing that tradition of sitting down and listening to a record and talking about what made that phrase work, what were they doing, and
That's interesting you say that, because you have Emmett Cohen as part of your trio, and on the record you have Benny Green and Emmett on your first record. So how was it going into the second project with them?
the second album.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first project was like I wasn't sure where I was going. I had just moved to New York, and I was playing with both Benny and Emmett. But Emmett and I we developed this complex range of styles that I just really wanted to, like I was mentioning earlier, really wanted to showcase on the next record. And a lot of the record are songs that I wanted to do years ago, but it wasn't time yet. Something was compelling. Now was the time to do these songs. And Emmett, just like, he's the yin to my yang in a way, you know. And arranging these songs came so naturally with him because he's suggesting things that I would have never thought of, and vice versa. And I'm getting him to think more about the song and the lyrics and the story and the arc. Even in a show, it's an arc. It's a show. I mean, I like to think every song I pick has a reason. And now that he gets that, it's just like I said, it's home.
Grab your coat and grab your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear that bitter cat thank you so much? And you know this tune is your life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with my blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. This was over. If I never had a cent, I'd be rich as Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street.
You studied at the famous University of Miami's Frost School of Music, and two of my favorite musicians came out of that, Pat Metheny and Bruce Hornsby.
And Bruce Hornsby, I got to sing on one of the concerts he was on. They came and did a, big concert with multiple, parts of the programs, and I was one of the background singers for that. That was awesome.
Bruce Hornsby, he's another complete musician. He plays jazz, he plays electronic, he does bluegrass. I mean, that school, Carmen Lundy.
Lundy, yeah.
What was it about that program that lured you down there?
Well, first of all, I was lucky. I was given a really good scholarship, and that was a lot of it too. But I was down there because the vocal program, and the thing about that school that's so special is that University of Miami has been the first in a lot of programs that they developed. The first jazz vocal program, the first school to have electric guitar as an instrument. The first, I think, laptop. They were the first school to have laptop as an instrument. Whatever, for me, whatever that means. But you know, just they're very progressive, and I really liked that. And I thought maybe I could find my place within all these different genres and find some focus between all these avenues of music that I'm, coming at from. And then all the artists you mentioned, Carmen and Pat and Bruce, they're all these.
Will Lee,
and,
John Cicada.
They're and Ben Folds too, they're all like these multi-genre, but it's not like it's totally focused and authentic to who they are, and that's what appealed me to that school. And also, I could get a full-rounded education there. It wasn't like only a conservatory experience. I wanted, to the ability to take anthropology and astronomy or something.
What do you recommend for young vocalists, female vocalists, one who want to study the music, but also who want to pursue this industry, because this is a male-dominated industry and a lot of stuff is changing. What are some of the words that you give some of the women coming into the business?
Well, I don't know too many young people anymore going into the new. I don't know the new generation as well because I'm on the road and I don't get to see them often. If I were to go into the schools and work with young students, I would maybe have a better understanding. But what I've noticed is that there's not a lot of attention to tracing back to the roots, and they want to, but I just don't think they know how. They maybe just need someone to tell them that. I say, okay, I go into masterclass, say, all right, who you like? And they say Ella Fitzgerald. Okay, who is Ella Fitzgerald listening to? Who is her favorite jazz singer? And also instrumentalist-wise, who is she listening to? And no one's able to answer that. And then, so I say, okay, well, one of her favorite singers was Connie Boswell. Who was Connie Boswell listening to? And that's Louis Armstrong, because she's from New Orleans. And you're just tracing it back as far as you can, listening to every possible version of a song. Don't just listen to Frank Sinatra, Nelson Riddle, and, for me, and that's just on the musical perspective. On the business perspective, it's particularly young women and vocalist women. There's so much trepidation. There's so much trepidation of playing with instrumentalists, because there are a lot of instrumentalists are hard on young vocalists, and vocalists, there are some who aren't doing the work, but the ones who are and just aren't there yet are getting a lot of negative energy. I see it. I saw it when I was coming up too, and I just think that to just really learning how to develop that hide is one of the most important skills in the non-musical setting. Just doing the work that's required, and knowing where you are, skill level wise, playing with people who are just like one step ahead of you. And that'll get you there to the next level, and go and hang, and don't be afraid. If you're there, don't be afraid to sit in, don't be afraid to ask and demand. That's just that kind of energy, but still humble and gracious, and knowing where you are. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense, because I asked that because this is a rarity. We're not seeing too many male and females wanting to advance as a vocalist. We see instrumentalists. Benny's doing his thing. We see everybody doing it, but this is kind of like the Testarossa or the Rolls Royce end of the jazz chain.
And I want to say, a lot of women back in the day, especially when there was a lot of sexualization, and there's so much less today, especially with the Me Too movement. Everyone's kind of actually trying to walk on eggshells sometimes, but 50 years ago, that's why a lot of women had to just be bitch, Speaking of one of the greatest band leaders, Betty Carter, was tough, man. And there was really no option. But, you could be the nice vocalist that sits on the side and, you're taken care of and everything. But if you want to demand that respect, back then you had to be kind of rough.
The back end of what you just said, without a Tommy Dorsey, without a Chick Webb, without a Duke Ellington,
Benny
Goodman, those guys were kind of malicious when it came down to women singers.
I know. But
not kind of, they were.
They were. But well, Benny Goodman was the first to hire a black singer, Billie Holiday. And in Chick Webb, Ella Fitzgerald actually led the band at times because he got sick, right? He died. And I just wish I could have known what Billie and Ella, these women, and Ella sang with Benny too, what their demeanor was and how if they demanded the respect or if just their artistry was just, I wish I knew. But I know that a lot of those band leaders were notorious for, and I just kind of was a no-nonsense kind of kid, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, the history between Sinatra and the Dorsey brothers,
right.
they love-hate, but
yeah.
Again, it's like what you said, if you can't cut it, this industry's not for you.
Right, and I do see a lot more in the last 4 years even, just so much more of people trying to be aware of how they're coming across, you know, if they're being respectful enough, and the people that I play with, you know, hire women not just because they're women, because they play good.
Right.
And I do too. I play with Ariel Pocock a lot, a good piano player, and I hope that we can get to that point, you know, where we don't even have to talk about it.
Right.
To make you were mine completely, but you told me the time was changing. Used to be you would kiss me sweetly, but lately you've been busily rearranging. So now I see nothing the same as you used to be. I went for you and you alone, and you for me ain't nothing like a going on there. No, nothing going on there. But you turn me away, turn me away. Ooh, baby, please don't turn me away. Oh, baby, please, 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 pretty baby, I'm begging you, please. Baby, begging you, please, pretty baby, don't you turn me away. You used to love me, but you changed it, baby, don't turn me away, don't turn me away. When you get love and you lose love, ain't nothing no one else can do that to take us. You and she used to be. So there's a breakup. How to make up when you get love and you lose love. That's it. Love split. Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. You're catching on pretty fast. You're a little bit of lying, really good. You tell me you're around, now I see the light at last. I didn't see it till like another figure, but still I do. Now I see how you are, and how much better by far can be. And don't tell me like I used to.
Veronica Swift, what does jazz music mean to you?
One foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, and where you stand, the stability of standing strong like that, where you are presently, where your center of balance is who you are now. And all of the musicians legends and young musicians, and even younger musicians who I see coming up that I'm really impressed by, all have that mentality, the respect and appreciation for what the people did before you to help make it possible for you to do your thing. And then also the support that you get from once you make that connection between the artists who came before. Like I hung out a lot with Annie Ross.
I miss her.
I miss her so much, man. Man, I go up to her apartment, we'd listen to records. She gave me a bunch of her music books. She's like, I don't need them anymore, you know.
That sounds like Annie.
And I would bring a pack of cigarettes and other things, and she goes, she's finished it all, and she goes, why didn't you bring more? I miss her so much. And
broke my heart when all this stuff went down. It broke my heart when
I couldn't go see her, you know.
Yeah.
But she was around longer than, and
Right.
she was doing her thing, you know. She was still smoking and drinking like a, you know.
She outlived the original members of that group.
Yes, she did. Oh man, that was an historic experience. sitting in the room when the London Vocal Project came to the St. Pete's Church, where they do the jazz masses, and they did Miles Ahead, right? That was Miles Ahead. That's John Hendricks' life project, and John Hendricks was there, sitting right next to Annie Ross. I'll never forget that, seeing those two in a room together.
I was there the night she was inducted as an NEA Jazz Master. She gave me the biggest hug and the biggest kiss, and she was on cloud. And John was there that night.
Yeah.
She was, she earned that times 30. She did.
Yeah, one of the great bebop lyricists, vocalist writers. Not and talk about a woman in a male-dominated. The bebop singers. Let's talk about Eddie Jefferson and Babs and Gonzalez and Kenny Pancho Haygood and John Hendricks. And who's a woman bebop singer you can think of from that era? The only one is Annie Ross, really.
That's right.
I mean, I'm thinking of, and there's a couple more, but really Annie Ross was one of the boys too and demanded that respect. I miss her a lot. And I was just saying, like, people like Annie who just gave, once they saw the respect you gave to the ones that came before and the music that came before, then they kind of like, what's the word? They give you a platform to do your thing, and no matter what kinds of music you're pulling from experience for inspiration from today, if you're authentic to what came before, they're so supportive of that.
That Metropolitan Room, which is now closed, that was a classroom. That was a classroom for a lot of singers.
Yes, it was. I would go all the time. It was Wednesday night, I think. I would go all the time, and you got a Tardo Hammer on piano, Warren Vacher, and Neil Miner would play. I would go all the time. My first time going, I was about 12 years old, and someone had told Annie that I was a huge fan and that I sang her music, and she had me come up and sing Twisted, which was like religious.
I think that's heard. You can't mess up on that one.
No. And I never get nervous for concerts or anything. But that I was so nervous for, because my hero was right there. She wrote the lyrics, and my God. So that's what jazz is. It's just all of these things we're talking about.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Terremoto Coffee Room here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank and congratulate the incomparable Veronica Swift for her time. Make sure you look out for her upcoming record, This Bitter Earth, which will be available on iTunes as well as Amazon.com, as well as CD Baby, available on the Mack Avenue Records in print. Also, I'd like to personally thank Mr. Benny Benack also for assisting me, as well as Rick and the staff here at Terremoto Coffee Room. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as visit my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.